one of our next connectors is going to be our 4/8 pin 12 volt connector. Now, this is a connector that it gives our motherboard some additional power. Our 4-pin connector here is what we're looking at for our pin 4 ATX 12 volt. Now, this 4-pin connector we'll commonly see on ATX extend type motherboards because they need a little bit more power than our standard 20-pin connector or 24-pin connector is going to provide. So they'll have that additional 4-pin port for our ATX on our ATX extend boards that we can just plug that 4-pin 12-volt connector right into. Now, we mentioned that 4-pin connector also has an 8-pin version. That 8-pin version you're going to see more commonly used in server environments. Again, it has yellow and black connections, and we have an example here. And we can see we have our 8-pin versus our 4-pin, but you're going to see our 8-pin more commonly used on boards like a server-type computer, server-type processing board. Now, our PCIe connectors, as we talked about in an earlier video, our PCIe connectors allow us to add in additional expansion slots, video cards, etc. And sometimes those additional expansion cards actually need additional power for them. Say we have a high-end video card and it isn't getting enough power just through that connection into the motherboard, so it needs an additional connector that's supplying it power directly from our power supply unit. These are where our PCIe connectors come in handy. Our 6-pin PCIe connector is going to be a 75-watt connector, and again, it's going to plug directly into our additional card that we plug into our PCIe slot, whereas we have an additional 8-pin connector which will provide 150 watts. So we just want to remember that when we're talking about our PCIe pin connectors, our 6-pin connector is going to provide 75 watts, and our 8-pin connector is going to provide us with 150 watts to that additional card. One of our final connectors that we'll take a look at is going to be what's known as our Berg connector. Now, our Berg connector is actually a small 4-pin connector, like we have here, that is used to connect into and power a floppy drive. Now, our floppy is going to be one of our only common additional component that we'll see using our 4-pin Berg connector, but we'll also notice that we sometimes encounter 2-pin Berg connectors, which look just like the 4-pin do, but just with 2 less. And these 2-pin Berg connectors are actually more commonly used as jumpers on the computer. They allow us to jump 2 pins together and make configuration components. And they also allow us to provide power, say, to the LED lights on the front of our computer, or say the illuminated power button on the front of our computer may require a 2-pin Berg connector that goes from the front panel of our computer to our motherboard. So we want to just keep in mind for our reference that our 4-pin Berg connector, when we think 4-pin Berg, we want to think our floppy drive. And when we're thinking of our 2-pin Berg, we want to think more of jumpers and providing power to front panel LEDs and lights. We've gone over our information for our power supply units, how we can pick a power supply unit, the different types of connectors that we have on it, and what our wattage means and how our power supply units convert power. That's all we have in our lesson for our power supply units, and thank you for joining us today at cybrary.it. I'm Anthony, and join us next time.